Hello guys, cool guy here, people of the interwebs. Today we're gonna watch Disturbing Mysteries That Were Solved 2. We saw part 1, whenever we watched that. Um, Now, that first part was just really gut-wrenching. Especially that story about the little girl was heartbreaking. Not all of these are super evil. Um, that one chick, they got beaten, and then they did stuff to her body. That one was sick, bro. People like that need to just be executed, I think. Let's hope we can see some cases that aren't as horrific as the ones in the last video. And maybe if they are as horrific, let's hope that retribution actually occurs. So let's get into it.
Around 8:30 a.m. on March 9th, 1970, two employees at the Colorado Department of Transportation were making their way along Highway 128 when they noticed what they thought was a human body. They just had to know what it was, so they got closer, and indeed, they confirmed it was a deceased woman. The two employees rushed to call police, and once they arrived, they stated that the woman had been both strangled and shot. She was discovered bound and was assaulted. The victim's remains were sent off for an autopsy, which yielded some unknown DNA. But of course, this DNA was more or less useless due to the technological limitations at the time. As for the victim herself, she was identified as Betty Lee Jones, a 23-year-old who was last seen just a day before in Denver, which is where she lived. The site where she was found dead was located about 40 miles from her home. This immediately led to police questioning Betty's husband, Robert. The two had only been married for a week and
first of all, his name is Robert. So just off of prejudice, I would say someone named Robert, maybe they shouldn't be executed or something. But how about you just name yourself Bob? I think Bob is maybe a better name than Robert. Robert just tells me, bro, like, yeah, like you're guilty, bro. Like you committed whatever crime you committed. And if you did commit it and your name happens to be Robert, you should probably be executed, is what I'm saying, pretty much.
According to friends and family, the couple often bickered with each other. According to Robert, he and Betty had an especially heated argument on the day that Betty was last seen. She stormed out of the home afterwards. Robert added that Betty flagged down a random blue sedan that was passing through and just rode off. Now, police did suspect that Robert may have been involved, but it wasn't like there was any concrete evidence at the time to charge him with Betty's murder. In 2006, a private lab named Bode Technologies was able to create a profile with that unknown DNA found back in 1970. The DNA was determined to belong to a male, but it could not be found in the National DNA Index System database. Nevertheless, it helped authorities develop 6 potential suspects, one of which was Betty's husband. But here's the thing, Robert had died in the year 2000, so investigators had to test his DNA against Robert's parents' DNA. In the end, it was determined that the sample did not belong to Robert. This was the biggest lead in the case at that point,
my bad
and
for saying
after
he
it
was
failed to
guilty.
yield a culprit, it was back to square one. The investigation wouldn't see any more major progression until 2019, when the profile was re-examined and a family tree was developed alongside it. After expanding on the generation of the suspect, investigators were intrigued about one particular woman. This woman was identified, which then led to the identities of her husband and children. The woman had 2 sons who were around their 20s at the time of Betty's death, and also lived in Denver. One of the sons had died in 1977, while the other was still alive and well. Investigators were able to track this man down for questioning and DNA testing. It was during this session that he revealed the identity of an additional estranged brother, this one being named Paul, and unfortunately, he had no idea where Paul was or if he was even still alive.
Now, I don't know why I'm telling this story, but I know a dude named Paul. People named Paul generally are not to be trusted, probably, I would say. No. And this person that I knew was named Paul. Now, sure, he had a facial deformity, He might have had like 13 surgeries when he was, a baby to survive. God bless that he survived. But now, this caused him to kind of develop this really weird self-conscious thing, like obviously, and he joined Boy Scouts, or they joined Boy Scouts, and they thought this dude, who we can call, for the sake of this video, we can call him Gabriel, because that's his name, and that dude, was one of the nicest dudes ever, bro. Like that guy wouldn't hurt a fly, and he thought, Gabriel must have said something. They were in the same Boy Scouts group. Gabriel must have said something that Paul misinterpreted. Autumn, and Paul's name is Autumn. I should respect that, but for the sake of this, it's Paul. And Paul bashed Gabriel with a bucket lid, like over the head, and then cracked his head open. Gabriel's alive and stuff like that. And luckily they didn't press any charges against Paul. But this is all to say, Paul is probably not a trustworthy person, in my personal experience. Now, do I know, if this Paul is also trustworthy? No, but I have an intuition about it, so.
Medical officials took the living brother's DNA to test against the DNA obtained back at the crime scene, and officials stated that they were closely related. It was now heavily suspected that whoever this mysterious Paul guy was may very well be Betty's killer. After extensive digging, authorities were finally able to identify this third brother as Paul Leroy Martin. But there was a catch.
Name's
Paul died
Leroy.
in
That guy's guilty of
2019,
whatever.
and it didn't
Look
seem
at him,
like
bro.
he had any children. So authorities
Look at this dude, bruh. I look at this dude, and I really be thinking, damn, bruh. Look at his haircut, first of all. I think, at that point, just go bald. You think you're a fryer or something? Dude, just chop it off. You're cooked, bruh. You're fried, bruh. It's over. Cut it off. There's no hope. And that, to me, says that, yeah, this man is probably guilty of whatever he's accused of being guilty of. Now, am I making hasty generalizations about people and coming to a quick, hot-headed conclusion? Mayhaps. But look at him, man. Sometimes you do gotta judge a book by its cover. I'm fine with judging this dude. What the hell? Am I stupid? I'm fine with judging this dude. What the hell? I'm fine with judging this dude by the cover of the book, The contents are probably rotten. And he probably did something horrible to this lady.
So authorities requested
look at
that
him.
Paul's body be exhumed, which was approved in April of
Oh, he's dead.
2020. After obtaining a sample from Paul and testing it against what they already had, medical officials revealed on April 24th of the same year that the two were a match. Paul Martin was Betty's killer. Paul was not known to have any connection to Betty, and after interviewing Paul's brother, it was said that he had no knowledge of Paul owning a blue sedan when they were still in touch. So just how exactly Paul stumbled upon Betty is still unknown, but finally the case has come to a close.
Now, you think I mean, to be fair, he wasn't caught when he died, right? Which is like a big thing. I heard somewhere that, don't take this advice at all because it's horrible advice to take. But I've heard that, if you hypothetically were to kill someone, you probably would want to kill someone who, you have absolutely zero connections to, I guess. Now, as far as killing people goes, the best method to not get caught killing someone is pretty surprising. It's to not kill someone. Try to take that to heart, really. I think it's a good lesson to learn, especially the technology nowadays. You saw the genome sequencing in the last video that they used to catch the killer, and they found out it was a mom. Like, Like, bruh, you're gonna get caught. I found it. I found him. Wow. Okay. Anyways, you're gonna get caught. Just like I found this dude. They're gonna find you, bro. And they're gonna execute you publicly with dinosaurs, BBWs, Neanderthals, horses, all of it, bro. So really, just don't kill people, bro. It's simple as that, I think. Do I know the secrets of the universe? No, but I'm getting there. I think this is one of them. So, follow the advice, probably. Is what I'm saying here, ultimately.
In June 1996, in the city of Philadelphia, a 22-year-old named Amy Willard was tragically murdered. Amy was said to be a talented athlete with no known enemies and never partook in any sort of degenerate activities.
Like
she
opposition?
received a full athletic scholarship to
Would she
George
die?
Mason University, where she was ranked among the top female lacrosse players in the country.
Damn.
Amy had dreams of becoming a coach or teacher later on. Due to the circumstances surrounding her case, many initially believed that the killer was a former police officer or was well versed in police procedures. Shortly after the case made its rounds in local news outlets, 3 men who claimed to be witnesses came forward. Each one placed themselves at the crime scene, but the interesting thing was they each had a different version of accounts. Over time, the public started to lean towards the idea that all 3 of these men were liars and were simply looking to get their brief time in the spotlight, so to speak. After returning home to Brookhaven for the summer of 1996, Amy decided to take some classes at a local school. On the night of June 19th, she joined her friends at Smokey Joe's Tavern in Wayne, Pennsylvania, which was a popular spot for college students. Amy left at around 1:30 to 1:40 a.m. to get some rest for her early class the next morning. In the early hours of the morning, specifically 2 a.m., off-duty paramedics stumbled upon Amy's blue 1995 Honda Civic on the shoulder of Interstate 476 near Marple Township. The car appeared abandoned with its engine running, headlights on, and radio playing. However, Amy herself was missing, and there were bloodstains on the pavement. When police arrived, they made several disturbing discoveries. There was blood along the guardrail as well as a tire iron nearby. There was also some minor damage to the rear bumper of the vehicle, which will become a particularly important detail later on. Then, around 10 a.m. the same day, police made another discovery. About half a mile from where Amy's car was located, her underwear and tennis shoes were found. Oddly enough, they were dry, which was strange since it was raining when Amy's car was initially found. This suggested that those items were placed there after the rain ended. The search operation quickly grew, involving helicopters, canine units, and a large number of volunteers. Around noon, a 23-year-old man named Andrew Kobach approached police stating that he had been on the ramp and saw Amy's car before those paramedics, but he didn't see anybody else there. Around 5 p.m. that day, children playing in an empty parking lot stumbled upon something that really freaked them out, or rather someone. It was Amy's lifeless body, completely nude. She had been dumped there 20 miles from where her car was found. Medical officials estimated her time of death to be around 7 a.m., approximately 5 hours after she was taken. Additionally, her skull had been crushed. Shortly after, police investigated Andrew Kobach and learned that he had previously worked near the location where her body was discovered. In fact, he worked only 5 blocks away. Andrew also lived less than half a mile from Smokey Joe's Tavern. At first, he was very cooperative and even allowed police to search his vehicle. Inside, they found handcuffs and a flashlight, which were the exact same ones they used. Further investigation revealed that Andrew had been charged in the past for impersonating a police officer.
Oh, what a loser, bro.
In that particular case, Andrew had turned on a side.
It's these people. I mean, these dorks really do exist. Whether like they get accepted into the academy or not. Ultimately, these people just want the title of being a police officer to be on a power trip, bro. They'll catch people on anything just because like oh you had like half ounce of Zaza, and at this point I wouldn't even be surprised if they arrested you for having like tobacco in your car or something, bro. Like these people trip, like legitimately they just want to feel powerful. They want to like dominate people, I guess. I mean, I guess yeah, in a sense they just are freaky dorks, bro, is ultimately what they are. Stay safe, bruh. you never know, you know, if you see a cop, really don't get out of the car, bro. Stay in the car. Like, really kind of assess your situation, bro. Like, you really don't want to do anything too fast or trust the other person. I say just never trust a cop, bruh. Not like on some weird thing or anything, but you just never know, bruh. This world's weird, bruh. Like, get too trusting. They'll like, whether it's an impersonator or not, bruh, they'll just like empty the blick on you, bruh. The whole clip, gone. Into you, I mean. Yeah, you're gonna be dead. So, you know, just watch out, is what I'm saying. Not all authority figures are, you know, trustworthy, in my opinion. But I don't know. What am I talking about?
Siren before pulling over a motorist. He then stepped out of his car and showed a badge to the man he just pulled over. But this guy knew that Andrew was a fraud and turned him in. Once authorities brought up this moment in Andrew's life, he immediately stopped talking to them and asked for a lawyer. It was at this time where his lawyer then said that Andrew claimed he was never at the location of Amy's car. Then another witness came forward who also claimed to be at the site where Amy went missing. This was a 30-year-old man named Harold Hutchinson, who was a former Pennsylvania state trooper. According to Harold, he actually spoke to an officer who pulled over Amy. Now, police did not exactly believe Harold's account at all and were convinced that he was never there. Then about a week later, another man comes forward named David Buggy, who also claimed that he was at Amy's car the day she disappeared. David said that he even spoke to the ambulance crew when they arrived. But after police interviewed medical officials, they all said that they've never even seen David before.
Or so he was later
prosecuted for lying to law enforcement.
Does he want clout, bruh?
Police suspected that one of these three men may have been involved in Amy's death. But between the three, there was little to no evidence at all to tie one of them to the murder. Fortunately, this case didn't go unsolved for very long, at least relative to most of the cases we have covered. On May 29, 1997, a man named Arthur Bomar was reported for an attempted carjacking. The person who made the call was a 19-year-old woman named Patty Jordan, who stated Arthur had followed her after she left a nightclub in Philadelphia. When she stopped at a red light, Arthur's car rear-ended hers, and then he motioned out his window to pull over so the two could go over the accident. Patty, however, saw that it was a large man driving and was feeling a bit intimidated and scared. So she decided to just keep driving when the light turned green. Arthur then sped past Patty and just kept going. It was here where she was able to write down his license plate number and handed it over to police after calling them. Authorities discovered that the vehicle belonged to Arthur, who had been convicted of second-degree murder back in 1978 in Nevada. Arthur was sentenced to life in prison, but was left out on parole after serving 11 years. Then in 1990, Arthur was charged with the attempted murder of a woman who refused to go on a date with him. Apparently.
Oh, nah, that's like different level of loser, bruh. These type of dorks can't handle, like, rejection. You can really just tell they never grew up, bro. These people are geeks, bro. And you can tell he's probably never had, you know, a baddie in his life, like a girl that just looks attractive, you know? Because if you can't handle rejection like that and try to murder the person or murder them or whatever after getting rejected, bro, you're like a different type of idiot, dude. Now, this dude's in his own category of menace, in my opinion, because, bro, he's like targeting women mainly, right? That's what it seems like. I don't know. Is that what the second-degree murder case is about? I'm not sure, but I know that he's at least targeted women twice. For no reason, apparently. Well, one of them was just, you know, you got rejected, bruh. Hurts, I guess. But to murder the person? Are we serious, bruh? Are you fried or something? What's going on, man? What decisions, like, happened in your life to where you genuinely can't handle being rejected? Is it, like, the end of the world for you? Or whatever. I don't know. People like this should legit just get executed, probably. I don't know. Let me know in the comments down below if you guys mess with public executions.
This woman went on to die in a situation involving illegal substances in 1991, which turned out to be a major factor in Arthur being released once again. During this investigation into Arthur, police discovered that he had been pulled over a
he should have never been let go.
The justice system 6 blocks away. Furthermore, Arthur was known to frequently visit a bar near the empty parking lot where Amy was found. So it seemed that police had a new prime suspect on their hands. But when they went to interview him, Arthur couldn't be found. Then on June 5th, 1997, just days after Patty reported Arthur to the police, another woman called police to report a man breaking into her third-floor apartment in Philadelphia. The man trying to break in was arrested, and he identified himself as Peter Thomas Love. The keys in his pocket led to a black 1993 Honda Accord. Authorities ran the plate and found that it was actually linked to Arthur Bomar. But here's the thing. The plate actually belonged to a 1993 Ford Escort, and after taking a quick look at this so-called Peter Love, it was clear that they had just caught Arthur Bomar. As for that Honda Accord, it was stolen from a 25-year-old woman named Maria Cabuenos, who went missing 3 months earlier. Police believed that Maria was abducted on the same highway as Amy. In the trunk of the Honda, Maria's
barely survived, bro.
And just like with Amy's car,
she was that
was
close
a slight
to
mark
becoming
on the back bumper. If you recall,
like that
19-year-old named Patty reported that she was rear-ended and was also told to pull over. So it seemed that this was Arthur's strategy to get in close with his victims. Ultimately, Arthur was convicted for Amy's murder after investigators discovered traces of Amy's blood as well in Maria's car. It's believed that Arthur was stalking women in Philadelphia and noticed Amy leaving a club alone and decided to trail her. And in case you're wondering, Maria's remains were found on January 1st, 1998, about 30 miles from where Amy and likely Maria had been abducted. Maria also died from head injuries caused by some blunt object, just like Amy. Arthur's lawyers attempted to justify his actions by saying he had a tough childhood and a low IQ. Furthermore, Arthur denied having killed Amy and stated that
I got a low IQ, and I don't be going out beating on women, bruh. You know, to be fair, okay, well, to be fair, that's not what I meant to say. You know, sometimes I see dudes, and I'm like, oh, that dude's drinking, you know, White Monster or Monster Energy. And yeah, you know, maybe that dude is gonna go home to beat on his woman. And, you know, that makes me sad. What can I do? But to say low IQ, not even like an external factor. Like, bro, there's a bunch of people who are stupid and live with stupidity, bro. You can't cure that. You can't cure being stupid, but you for sure can, like, hold your urge back to kill people. You know, if you have a low IQ, you're probably not even thinking about murdering people. What do I think about? BBWs and dinosaurs is ultimately what I'd be thinking about, you know? Not killing people. That's sick, bruh. That's genuinely sick, bruh. You don't see people, like, with mental stupidity, like, murdering people. You don't even see people with high IQ do that, you know? Like, come on, are we serious? His legal team was really just trying to grasp at, like, any straw that existed, bro. That's pathetic. This dude's so lame.
He was being used as a scapegoat because he...
Imagine your defense being, oh, I'm just so stupid, that's why I did it. Like, imagine willingly having your defense be that you're just too stupid, and that's why you killed someone. You know, there's one thing, you know, being a murderer or whatever, that's awful. That's horrible. Don't be a murderer. But there's another thing in losing your dignity while being convicted as a murderer, bro. Just take it in stride. You know, I'm not saying it's something to be proud of, especially beating on women and stuff. But like you did what you did, face justice. Stop being like a little pussy, bruh. And like throwing away the last bit of whatever you have, to try and defend yourself out of something helpless, ultimately. Like, bro, you murdered a chick. And you're claiming that you're too stupid to face the facts. Not even that you're mentally ill. Just that you're mentally stupid, bruh. That in and of itself is mentally stupid. And, you know, I would just probably lock him up for extra time, bruh. If you're that stupid and you kill someone, the whole point of being locked up in prison is to have it be a quote-unquote rehabilitation for whoever goes in there for whatever purpose. Low-key, you know, that's kind of not what happens. People aren't rehabilitated, it's like a whole different thing. Like the homeless guy was talking about, bro. Like you're not a part of society anymore, like at all. Even after you're rehabilitated, um, but someone who is mentally stupid will probably not be rehabilitated. They won't learn from their mistakes because they can't put two and two together, you know? So you just lock this guy up forever, bruh. Maybe he's trying to like, or maybe it wasn't for time. Maybe he was like, oh, I'm too stupid, so don't execute me, please, or something. I say, sick the dinosaurs on him, bruh. That's what I be saying.
He was black. But Arthur's fiance and 2 inmates stated that Arthur confessed to killing Amy. He was sentenced to death on October 6th, 1998, where he yelled out on TV, "F you and your kids," to an official.
Holy shit. Oh!
This next case takes us to the rugged mountains of Colorado on July 7th, 1994, where a hiker was making her way through the area, taking in the views. This hiker was named Barbara Pletcher, and once she was done exploring the mountains, she told her group that she was going to take a different route back. It was on this new path where Barbara came across some bones. At first, she thought that they belonged to some animal, but after closer inspection, Barbara noticed that it was actually a jawbone with gold fillings. Nearby was also a human skull. Barbara had no way to contact authorities or her group, so she grabbed the bones and gently placed them in a plastic bag. She later informed a Forest Service supervisor named Blake Patton about her discovery, who then informed police. It didn't take long for investigators to find additional bones as well as strands of reddish-brown hair. In the area, there was also a small piece of a black vinyl belt. Based on the rest of the remains found, officials believe that the victim was a 35 to 40-year-old woman that stood at about 5'5" tall. Authorities were also convinced that this was a homicide case, as the remains looked to have been intentionally hidden, and since they could not find any actual clothing, they believed that the victim was murdered elsewhere, then dumped in the mountains. A forensic anthropologist named Robert Pickering later determined that the woman likely died within a year of the date when her remains were found. There was no evidence at all that could help narrow down the culprit, nor was there really much medical officials could do with the bones they obtained. So officials came out with a facial reconstruction in 1995 in hopes that someone somewhere would recognize the person so that they could have more information to work with. But as you would expect, the hollow feeling to Jane Doe. Lieutenant Greg Heiler was quoted saying, "It gives me a hollow feeling in the pit of my stomach. Sometimes I wonder what I could do that hasn't been done. Up to this point, someone has literally gotten away with murder." Little did investigators know that the victim they found was actually a registered missing person. Fast forward to April 19th, 2022, we finally get a major break in the case. Investigators had the remains of the Windy Point Jane Doe resubmitted for testing. Montrose County Sheriff Gene Lillard received a phone call and said the following to the public. On April 18th, 2022, I received a call from CBI analyst and forensic lab and cold case division's Audrey Simpkins, who asked me if I was ready for some really good news. Analyst Simpkins told me that the results came back with a positive ID of Windy Point Jane. Turns out it was a 45-year-old woman named Susan Hops who was reported missing and last seen in Lakewood, Washington in 1993. Now, the interesting thing was Susan's missing persons case was actually cleared by mistake in April of 1994, just months before her remains were found. Investigators now had half of the case solved, so they just had to find out who was responsible for killing Susan. After further digging, it was determined that Susan had no known connections to Colorado. Investigators were able to get in touch with some friends of Susan's all those years back, and apparently she left one day with 2 friends and never came back. And the identities of those friends are still unknown.
Damn, that's so sad. No.
In the evening of October 22nd, 1989 in St. Joseph, Minnesota, 11-year-old Jacob Wetterling, accompanied by his brother and friend Aaron, stopped by a convenience store. They left on their bikes around 9:15 p.m. While cycling approximately a quarter mile from Jacob's home, a masked man dressed in all black jumped out at the trio armed with a gun. The man ordered the boys to lie in a ditch before asking how old they were. Both Jacob's brother and Aaron were then told to run or else they would die. As for Jacob himself, he was told to remain on the ground. As Aaron and Jacob's brother distanced themselves, they looked back and saw the man fade into the darkness with Jacob. Shortly after the abduction, witnesses called police and reported seeing a suspicious individual at the convenience store. A couple months later, an additional lead came up. There was a child case where an unidentified man assaulted a 12-year-old boy 10 miles from St. Joseph.
That's disgusting,
This boy,
bro.
who remains unnamed, was on his way home after some ice skating when a car pulled up next to him and dragged the boy inside. According to the child, he was then tossed out of the car and told to hurry off or else he was going to be shot. Investigators believe that the case with Jacob Wetterling and this other boy were related, but they didn't have any evidence to really support this. Aaron and Jacob's brother told police that the man was white and looked to be in his 50s. He was of average height and had a round, sturdy build. The case would later go cold after leads stopped coming in. But in September of 2004, the case found a new spark. A man living in Minnesota was spotted and said to be strikingly similar to the age progression photo released of Jacob Wetterling. Police were contacted about this and they were able to track this man down, but he refused to provide DNA for testing and was adamant that he was not Jacob. Nevertheless, authorities were able to get his fingerprints and they were determined to not be a match. Then another lead in 2010 brought police to a farm where a person of interest was rumored to have buried Jacob's remains. A search in this location also yielded no results. Then, right as the case seemed destined to go cold once more, a man named Danny Heinrich was arrested in October of 2015 for the possession of child. Danny just so happened to have been another person of interest in Jacob's case since the 90s. And before we look into Danny more, I want to state that in the mid-80s, there was a series of over 5 different abductions and assault cases about 30 minutes from St. Joseph. Danny's DNA was tied to one of those cases, but the statute of limitations did expire with that particular case, so he was not pursued for it. However, after relentless questioning, Danny actually took authorities to the location of Jacob's remains, sharing that the boy was dead. After recovering them, officials determined that Jacob had died as a result of a gunshot. Now, Danny didn't actually admit to being the killer at first, but would later cave and tell investigators that it was he who abducted and murdered Jacob. And this is where a lot of people are going to get extremely angry with this case. Danny was offered a plea deal which stated that he would not be charged with Jacob's death. As for that other charge of possessing illegal explicit material, Danny received a 20-year sentence in prison.
Bro, the justice system is just, bro, just not, it doesn't work. Like, you get arrested for weed for like 30 years, bro. This dude has CP. He has literally, he touched the kid, kidnapped the kid, and murdered the kid, and probably has done it to multiple kids, bro. It's like, are we serious, bro? He got only 20 years. To be fair, he is old. He's probably gonna die in prison. But again, you know, this dude should be tarred and feathered, I think. People like that should just be executed, bro. And it's a shame that they're even still allowed to live after that. I don't care if it's in prison or, you know, whatever, but that's sick, bro. This video is low-key worse than the last one.
This next case takes us to a small town named Thermopolis located in the state of Wyoming. After residing in Thermopolis for years, a resident known as Gabby decided to move away in 1986, leaving behind various items including an old locked footlocker in a shed. Newell Sessions, a friend of Gabby's, agreed to move the shed off the property. When Gabby returned to Thermopolis sometime later, he couldn't take the footlocker with him. Several years passed without any contact from Gabby, and Newell got curious and wanted to know what was inside this locker. Thinking that Gabby wasn't going to return, Newell gathered some of his friends to help him open up the locker. On March 30th, 1992, Newell used a blowtorch to destroy the lock. Inside the footlocker, Newell uncovered a human skeleton which was partially covered by a plastic sheet. This discovery really shocked him, and he wasn't entirely sure if he should tell police. Newell's wife, Daisy, however, insisted that they had to contact the sheriff. Prior to doing so, Newell tried to get into contact with Gabby once again. This time, Gabby did answer him, and he claimed to have never opened the footlocker and was shocked by the news. According to Gabby, he vaguely recalled getting the locker at a garage sale, but couldn't remember the specifics. At first, Gabby even thought that Newell was trying to prank him. Once Sheriff John Lumley was contacted and informed about the skeleton, he immediately thought that Gabby was withholding some secrets. John realized that Gabby had prior run-ins with the law and didn't believe that Gabby never opened up the locker after traveling around with it in the past. Most people, if they were to purchase such an item, would open it up immediately due to curiosity. John just couldn't make sense of why Gabby would leave it closed. So he questioned Gabby, who responded by saying that he did try sawing through the lock in the past, but failed several times. Afterward, he just gave up and said that it was most likely not worth the effort of trying to get in. Following the discovery of the skeleton, a bullet was uncovered inside of the skull behind the left eye, which led many to believe that this person was murdered. Sheriff Lumley decided to visit Gabby, who was in Arlington, Texas at the time, for more information. The sheriff felt that Gabby was being intentionally vague and did not believe what he was told. But that's not to say that Lumley thought Gabby was the murderer, because he didn't believe that at all. He just felt that Gabby knew who the actual killer was. Medical officials later stated that the skeleton belonged to a white male aged somewhere in his 50s to 60s that stood anywhere between 5'7" to 5'9" tall. As for the bullet, it was determined to have come from a 25 caliber Colt semi-automatic pistol with a 2-inch barrel from the early 1900s. The clay reconstruction you're seeing on screen is what the man is believed to have looked like when he died.
Are we serious? Bro, if you see this dude in the streets or wherever, bro, I feel like it'd be very easy not to get killed by him. You know, not to disrespect his victims or something. But I see this dude, and I think, bro, that guy is trouble. I'm judging a book by its cover, and I'm running, bro. I'm getting out of there. I don't care if this dude's innocent or something, you know, which he isn't, but hypothetically, if he was, I would just run, bro. I wouldn't even entertain the idea that this dude might be like a good person at heart or something. Bro, this dude needs to be locked up in a zoo or something, bro. This is like kind of scary, honestly.
Authorities were hopeful that someone would recognize the reconstruction and come forward with more information. But this wasn't the case, and the investigation went cold. Then in October of 2017, the DNA from the skeleton was re-examined and officials got a hit. The skeleton was of a man named Joseph Mulvaney, who was born on January 3rd, 1921. Joseph was a member of the Illinois National Guard's 130th Infantry in 1941. After being deployed to the Pacific Theater during World War II, he became a railroad worker in California, where he married and had 3 children. In 1963, the family moved to Iowa and purchased a house. It was around this time when Joseph suddenly disappeared. But the odd thing is that he was never reported missing. Apparently, his kids were told that their father had walked out on them, but they always believed that their father was killed. Eventually, a teenager named Shelley Statler came across a story about the skeleton in a newspaper. This sparked her curiosity, and after looking at a photo of the skeleton, she believed that its facial structure resembled many of her family members. Shelley had been told stories about how her grandpa, Joseph Mulvaney, suddenly went missing. She thought that this skeleton, which was found in the locker, might be him. Shelley and her mother later got in touch with Wyoming law enforcement, who agreed to take their DNA and have it tested against the skeleton.
Wait, Was the reconstruction of that guy the victim or the killer? I'm not gonna go back to check. That's my bad. I was distracted. But if that was a killer, yeah, he's 100% guilty. Just look at the way he looks, bro. You know, that's what I'm saying. If that was the victim, I probably still would run from him. You know, I probably wouldn't want to even entertain the fact that he's innocent. But the fact that he is, if he is, I'm sorry for the words I said. Let's continue the video.
And it was here when we found out that it is with 99.99% certainty that the skeleton is Joseph. This led to a theory that Joseph's wife, Mary Elise, had shot and killed Joseph, then had help with burying the body. Help
Okay, it
from
was a
whom,
victim,
you may
I'm sorry.
ask? Well, turns out that this Gabby person was actually a son of Mary's that she had with another man before meeting Joseph. It's believed that after burying Joseph, Gabby had dug up his remains and stored them in that footlocker for whatever reason. But this is simply an unconfirmed theory, as Mary herself passed away in 2009. And as for Gabby, he took his own life not too long after Sheriff Lumley paid him a visit. But it should be stated that this particular detail is more of a rumor rather than a fact. There is just a large amount of people that say he is no longer living. Furthermore, it was stated that Joseph and Mary did have frequent arguments and that the relationship wasn't exactly healthy, but in the end, no charges were made in the case.
I'm gonna disregard the video on the left right there that has popped up. We are never gonna watch that. Now, did I really understand what was going on in this video? No. Don't kill people. Don't touch kids. And don't lie to your mom. People in the interwebs, cool guy out.